We've got breaking news out of the NFL where the Dolphins are planning to hire Jon-Eric Sullivan as their next general manager. That is the latest from our Jonathan Jones. He's been with the Packers organization since 2003, serving as the team's vice president of player personnel since 2022. It'll start a new era in the front office for Miami, who fired Chris Grier midseason after 10 years as GM. The Dolphins currently have the longest postseason win drought in the NFL. They last won a playoff game back in 2000. Let's welcome in CBS Sports lead NFL insider Jonathan Jones. First and foremost, JJ, what do Fins fans and what do we need to know about him?
So, well-respected guy, Jon-Eric Sullivan. His dad was a longtime coach, both in the college and professional ranks. And so that's sort of how he got his foot in the door more than 2 decades ago with the Green Bay Packers. But from there, has absolutely worked for everything that he has gotten, stayed with that organization, has seen how one of the best, classiest, most consistent and successful franchises has been operated across different general managers for the past 2 decades. He's a proud alumnus of Gardner-Webb University, so shout out Boiling Springs, North Carolina, very close to my hometown. I got to just throw that in there, but we see how he has moved up the ladder. And that is a lengthy ladder, right, over 20 years to finally get this opportunity. I think he got an interview or 2 last year. Again, well-respected for his scouting background and prowess. And that is something that the Miami Dolphins were very interested in from the start. I had reported a couple of weeks ago that the Dolphins were going to be interested in finding a general manager who could really help in the college scouting specifically, right? That they feel pretty good about where they are on the pro side. They feel pretty good about where they are football administration and operations. They have an SVP in Brandon Shore, who's probably going to get a little bit more power there in Miami. So they really wanted a GM who had a strong background in scouting. And I don't know that they could have done much better in terms of that than landing on Jon-Eric Sullivan from the Packers.
Former wide receiver for the running Bulldogs there. So the GM is the first domino to fall. Mike McDaniel was fired yesterday, so the next one we assume would be the head coach. So what does this move today tell us about where they could go there?
So, Emily, yesterday, everyone was asking, hey, is this going to be a package deal in Miami? Are they going to want to try to, did they fire Mike McDaniel so that they could go get Harbaugh? And are they going to pair Harbaugh with a guy who used to be in his front office with the Baltimore Ravens and Chad Alexander? He was a finalist, the Chargers assistant GM was, for this job that ultimately went to Jon-Eric Sullivan. Look, Harbaugh is certainly still in play in Miami. They are most certainly still interested in him, and you have to believe that he has interest in Miami. But we also know in our reporting that Harbaugh is not meeting with any teams until next week, and that, of course, is strategic. He gets to let them decide what their pitch to him is going to be. He gets to see what happens in Wild Card Weekend. If there's going to be a surprise firing, one more across the NFL with one of these playoff teams, and now he could be a contender there. So we'll know a little bit more next week in terms of his interview schedule. In talking with folks around the league, I asked, hey, well, what sort of coach would Jon-Eric Sullivan want to go after? And the response that I got, I know a lot of people are going to look at Miami and they're going to think glitz and glam and flash and hot offensive coordinator candidate. And look, that may be the case in Miami. That may be who they ultimately land on. But again, you're talking about a grinder at general manager. You're talking about a guy who has his entire life been in football, with his dad being a long-time coach. And what one person said to me was, he's just as likely to hire someone who was a special teams coordinator at head coach than he is the hotshot offensive coordinator. So I think that there's going to be a wide and broad spectrum here of potential candidates for the Miami Dolphins. This is something he's been able to tinker with for some time as he is prepared to get this seat. And now, being in Miami, this is the first very big decision of his young career.
First, but not the only. He has a lot of big off-season decisions he has to make with the roster. Number one, of course, on that list is what to do with the quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. Not the only, though. What all is Jon-Eric Sullivan dealing with here?
Yeah, I mean, you got Tua, and Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and they didn't trade Waddle, and so are they going to have to pay Waddle? Are they going to try to trade him? Are they going to try to reset this offseason? There are a number of big questions facing this Miami Dolphins team looking forward, and of course, who they hire at head coach will help us inform us on what they're going to do come mid-March at the start of the new league year. If they get a guy like Harbaugh, it feels very difficult for me to believe that they're going to have a reset, right? That they're just going to trade away a bunch of veterans and clear some cap space and not be very competitive in 2026 with an eye on 2027. If they get the guy who's a first-time head coach, perhaps, and they give him a 5 or 6 year contract, hopefully 6, that would then signal to me, all right, they're clearing the books, and they're not too concerned about making the playoffs in 2026. So this upcoming decision will inform the next one. So what are they going to do with Tua Tagovailoa, who just a couple summers ago signed a 4-year, $212 million contract? Well, didn't he just say the other day that it would be dope to start somewhere else? And look, they still owe him $50+ million, and the cap hit is going to be what it is for Tua. We'll see how he interacts with the new GM, with the new head coach. But a lot of folks believe that Tua is certainly on his way out in Miami. We had reported a couple months ago, after Tyreek Hill's big injury, it was very, very unlikely that he would return to Miami. Certainly almost impossible for him to return under his current contract the way that it's constructed. And so if he does return, it would be under a completely new deal. We mentioned Jalen Waddle earlier. He was being dangled out there by interim GM Champ Kelly and the group that led this team after they fired GM Chris Greer back at Halloween. Will they decide to ultimately trade him away, or will they give him a new contract? These are all the decisions that are facing the Miami Dolphins, and they don't have much cap space available to them. So how are they going to find the next quarterback? What's interesting, Emily, and I'll just say this, Jon-Eric Sullivan has been with the Packers organization who they found quarterbacks without the number 1 overall pick, right? They found Brett Favre without the number 1 overall pick before Sullivan got there. They found Aaron Rodgers late in the first. They got Jordan Love, I think, in the 20s a few years ago. So he is used to doing things like this, of finding the quality quarterbacks without picking in the top 5. He has seen it done over the years. And so just keep that in mind as the Miami Dolphins continue on in this free agency period and into the draft, what they may do at the most important position in sports.
A lot of work ahead. Jonathan Jones, appreciate you joining us with the news that the Dolphins plan to hire Packers VP of Player Personnel, Jon-Eric Sullivan, as their next general manager. We appreciate you being here with us this morning. Elsewhere in the AFC East, with the Bills still playing some football on the road in Jacksonville, taking on the red-hot Jags with Trevor Lawrence at quarterback. You can watch this game Sunday, 1 Eastern on CBS and stream